Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the October meeting of the Fairfax County Economic Development Authority Commission. I am Andrew Taherzadeh, Assistant Director of Communications at the EDA. I am your moderator for this meeting, which means I will have control over the audio functions of this Zoom call, and I will control the PowerPoint slides that will be used for the meeting. At this time, I would like to ask all those on this call to mute themselves. Now, I would like to welcome members of the commission to the meeting. Chairman Kathy Lang, Vice Chairman James Quigley, Secretary Ron Johnson, Treasurer and Assistant Secretary Christian Deschar, and members Lenny Hainsworth, Rocky Mitchell, and Stephen Partridge. FCEDA President and CEO Victor Hoskins and Executive Vice President Alex Imes are on the call, as are EDA Consul Mike Graff, a number of our EDA staff members, consultants who represent the EDA in offices overseas and California, and our marketing communications consultants. I would also like to welcome Fairfax County officials who have joined us for the meeting, as well as our guest speaker for the evening, Dr. Gregory Washington, President of George Mason University. This is a public meeting of the commission and is being recorded. Presenting tonight will be Chairman Lang, President Hoskins, Executive Vice President Imes, and Stephen Tarditi, Director of the FCEDA's Market Intelligence Division. Vice President of Operations, Donna Hurwitz, Talent Initiatives Director, Michael Batt, and Communications Director, Alan Fogg. Members of the FCEDA Commission who have questions will have the opportunity to ask questions as they normally would during meetings. If anyone from the public has any questions, please select the chat function at the bottom of the Zoom screen to ask a question, or email Cheryl Martelli of the FCEDA. Cheryl's email address is posted in the chat box. We will not answer questions from the public during the meeting, but we will respond to all questions in writing afterward. With that, I will ask Chairman Lang to begin the agenda. Chairman Lang. Chairman Lang?
Chairman Lang, you're on mute. You're on mute.
I thought it was my internet. I'll get this straightened out sooner or later. I'd like to welcome everybody and thank you very much, Andrew. Welcome to our October meeting. We have a very interesting session ahead of us featuring the new president of George Mason University. We're so excited to have you here with us tonight as we forge an even stronger working relationship and partnership with the university and the Economic Development Authority. So let me start out by asking for the approval of the minutes of the September meeting. And if Mike Graff has joined us, I'm going to ask him to do a roll call. But first, let me ask, is there a motion for approval?
I move approval, Madam Chair. Ronald Johnson.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Do I hear a second?
Second. Commissioner Partridge.
Okay, Steve, we've got that. Okay. And I didn't see Mike Graff on the line. All right. Is there any discussion?
Hey, Kathy, it's Mike Graff. I'm on the phone. I apologize.
Okay, that's fine. Is there any discussion? All right, then I'm going to ask our counselor to please take the roll call.
Any objection? Is this, we considered the minutes, Chairman Lang?
Yes, this is the minutes.
Okay. Is there any objection by any of the commissioners to the adoption of the minutes?
No.
Okay, hearing none, the minutes are approved.
Okay, very good. So let me move to Commissioner Deschauer, who's going to present the treasurer's report.
Thanks, Chairman Lang. Only immediate items. We've had 2 new hires since the last meeting, and then I'll turn it over to Donna, who has a number of items she's going to walk us through.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Deschauer, Madam Chair, and commissioners. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. As Commissioner Deschauer noted, we have 2 new hires who will be joining the EDA on November 9th, and they are both business investment managers that will join our national team. So we look forward to their arrival. Tonight, we are talking about really 3 different fiscal years, and I'm going to try and keep this straight for you here tonight. It gets a bit confusing, but the consent item that we presented to you in your packet was for, of course, the current fiscal year 21. The first item I'm going to bring to you this evening for a vote is the fiscal year 2020 financial statements and audit report. So this is for the year that concluded on June 30th, just a few months ago. Last month, I brought you the draft audit report, and tonight I come to you for a vote on the final report. It was sent to the commissioners in advance of the meeting, and I just want to tell you that the auditors found all of our financial statements to be neutral, consistent, and clear. All transactions have been recognized. They found no instance of non-compliance with any laws or regulations, and no deficiencies in our internal controls. There was 1 journal entry correction that was made, taking an expenditure item made in FY20, which was actually determined to be an FY19 accrual. So that change was made. There's a lot of additional information in the report that you received, and though it's not part of the financial statements, it is required by the GASB, which is the Government Accounting Standards Board, in order to put the financial statements in context. So that's why the report appears lengthy. But with that, Madam Chair, I will turn it over to you for a vote, unless there are any questions that I can answer about this report.
Yeah, so shall we ask then for a approval of the audit for the FY20 financial audit report first? And so let me ask for a motion for approval.
So moved, Commissioner Partridge.
Great. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Quigley. All right. Is there any further discussion? All right. So let's have our Counselor Mike Graff do a roll call vote, please.
Hey, Kathy, it's Mike. I'm a little embarrassed in that because of my phone situation. I think if it's okay with you, I think this will work. I would just ask if any of the commissioners has any objection to the adoption of the resolution, if they could so state.
That sounds fine. Is there any objection? Okay. All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. And the second item, Donna?
Yes, first let me thank you for your vote and let you all know that this report will now be forwarded to the Board of Supervisors for inclusion in the county's consolidated financial report, which is submitted to the Commonwealth prior to or on November 1st. And I really want to acknowledge the operations team who is responsible for the outstanding work that leads to our clean reports year after year. In particular, I want to thank Barbara Cohen, who's the Director of Operations, because she has worked on EDA audit since the 1980s and is really the bedrock of our success in these clean reports. So this officially concludes fiscal year 20. And I will now move on, jump ahead to fiscal year 22 and our initial budget plan. Fiscal year 22 will begin on July 1st of 2021. So nearly a year from now, or 9 months from now. But together with the county, we are already beginning to work on plans for fiscal year 22. The plan that I bring to you tonight includes the overall budget amount that we currently expect to have in FY22 based on our best estimate. And of course, right now it's more difficult than ever to make projections, but we will continue to evaluate along the way and pivot as necessary. This FY22 budget plan was sent to the commissioners in advance of this meeting. And I just want to let you know that it assumes no new spending requests, no new FTEs. It assumes a 2% market rate adjustment for staff, but that will not be actually determined until approved by the Board of Supervisors and the Commission in July of 2021. And this plan also assumes that business travel will begin to return in fiscal year 22, though at a slightly lower level, and that conferences will slowly begin to return as well. So I also ask you for a vote on this item this evening, and I'm prepared to answer any questions that you may have.
Let's start by seeing if any of the commissioners have any questions, and then we'll move forward from there.
Madam Chair, this is Commissioner Johnson. I have one quick question, please.
Yeah,
I noticed from my FY21 to FY22, that's about $104,000 decrease in our budget. It's not a lot, but could she walk us through how significant that is?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you for asking that question. So the primary reason for that difference is that the EDA serves as a financial pass-through from for money funds from the Board of Supervisors to the Community Business Partnership. And the amount allocated to the Community Business Partnership fluctuates from year to year. And indeed, in fiscal year 21, it was $100,000 more. So that is an amount determined solely by the county, and those funds are not expended by us. But it does cause the bottom line to vary.
Okay.
Okay.
And secondly, I noticed that under marketing and communication, we've gone from 1 million to 800,000. Could you speak to that briefly, please?
Yes, sir. Our current marketing communications budget does not spend nearly as much money on traditional advertising as we used to, that is print or radio advertising. And instead today, the vast majority of that the promotional piece there is spent on digital advertising. We have been able to build a lot of efficiencies into our use of the marketing communications dollars. And I also do want to point out that we did make a change in how we have allocated, or not even allocated, accounted for some of our information technology spending in this plan. So our own website is actually listed under information technology now, which it wasn't in the past. And that's because we have consolidated all of our IT spending down there. The money that has been saved by the efficiency in marketing communications has helped us as we've increased expenditures in some other areas, because as you can imagine, vendors who supply market research databases and other services do indeed increase their prices by small percentages each year. And since we do not ask for additional funds, we use efficiencies gained in one area to accommodate other increases.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
one question from me, and I noticed that the training budget has been significantly increased. I'm assuming that's professional development for the staff?
Yes, that's exactly right. That has been a priority of President Hoskins, and I'm really proud to say that we have been able to offer more professional opportunities to our staff.
Great, glad to hear that. Are there any further questions?
What's under other operating expenses? And there seems to be some flux there as well, Donna.
Mm-hmm. So it's really a variety of things, none of which are very large, but they all add up. It's ranging from, we have a car that is provided to us by the county, and so we pay a fee to them for the use of that car. We have miscellaneous services such as temporary agency services that fall under that. Other things like smaller utility bills and such, or repairs around our office suite. Right now, cleaning in the office suite continues, even though we're not there. We do a lot of disinfecting because of the fact that some employees do occasionally go into the office.
One point I just would bring up, and maybe in closed strategic session need to discuss, is that we spend about 10% of our operating elements of our budget on our international pieces. And with the impact that COVID's provided and the potential changing economic landscape, all companies are sort of relooking at their spend and where business is coming from. And I know we've got, had made bets in 6 international locations. I'm wondering, I guess it's more of a rhetorical question, would be, do we reevaluate the world's economy? Where are jobs going to come from? Which companies are going to come here based on the economy we think we're going to see here in the next year? So I would like to see, in a future session for us to continue to discuss our international investment and do we feel as strongly about these locations post-COVID?
Sounds good. Yeah. Okay. Great. So we will make sure we capture that. And so can I ask for a motion for approval of the 22 budget plan?
So moved, Commissioner Partridge.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Commissioner Johnson and Council Graff will just do see if there are any objections.
Yeah, we can just do the yays and nays.
Okay. All right. All in favor? Yay.
Okay.
Any nays? Okay. Thank you very much. And thank you, Donna. Thank you once again to the team for the audit. It's amazing the work that I know goes into that and that we always have done so well in that. And thank you again. It's been a complicated year. I can't imagine what it's been like to try and do an audit during COVID. So thank you very much. And please thank the team.
I sure will. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All righty. So let's move on. At last month's meeting, we began a series of guest speakers to provide the commission and staff with various perspectives about the post-COVID-19 economic recovery. And these thought leaders will help us provide strategic vision for the future. And as you know, we have a strategic planning session set in February. We kicked off this series with Fairfax County Executive Brian Hill. Tonight, we are delighted to have Dr. Gregory Washington, the new president of George Mason University, with us. Gregory Washington became the 8th president of George Mason University on July 1st, 2020. He is the former dean of the School of Engineering at the University of California, Irvine, and former interim dean of the College of Engineering at The Ohio State University. In his 7 years at UCI, Washington expanded undergraduate and graduate enrollment in the engineering school and recruited and hired one of the most diverse engineering faculty cohorts in the country. In addition, he established the University of California's first student makerspace and launched the OC STEM initiative, one of the nation's first STEM ecosystems in Orange County, California. Dr. Washington created a new graduate and undergraduate programs with UCI business and humanities schools and led the development of the Hariba Institute for Mobility and Connectivity to advance next generation advanced mobility systems. The first African-American Dean of Engineering at the University of California campus and the first African-American president at Mason, Washington has established an Office of Access and Inclusion at UCI to enhance campus life for all students and chaired the task force on ensuring a positive climate for the campus Black community. Dr. Washington began his academic career in 1995 as an assistant professor in the Department of Mechanical and Aerospace Engineering at The Ohio State University and served as interim dean of the engineering school from 2008 to 2011. Dr. Washington received the Alumni Award for Distinguished Teaching, the Harrison Faculty Award for Excellence in Engineering Education, and the Lumley Research Award. He also received the National Science Foundation Faculty Early Career Development Award. A first-generation college graduate, Dr. Washington is a New York City native. He earned 3 degrees in mechanical engineering, including his PhD at North Carolina State University. President Washington will speak for about 20 minutes, and we will have time after his remarks for questions from the commissioners. Thank you so much, Dr. Washington, for joining us tonight.
Well, look, I am ecstatic to be here. And, you know, this is part of the vision in terms of us working together. It starts with engagement. It starts with a shared vision and me kind of highlighting to you some of the directions in which the university is going to take. And then it begins with a discussion after that of how we work together, how we can support you all and how you all can support us. So next slide, please. Look, the reality is that we are dealing with unprecedented global challenges. And I like to highlight those in terms of what I call level 1 challenges and level 2 challenges. Level 1 challenges, go ahead and hit the next click, have the ability to eliminate our way of life. And we're seeing that is playing out as we speak in terms of what we see happening in the pandemic and in terms of what we see happening with our climate. Look, the reality of the situation is this. The East, where we live here, are dealing with double the number of tropical hurricanes. And we recorded this year what may be the highest recorded temperature on Earth just this year, and in any one single place, 131 degrees. The biblical flooding that's been happening across the country, when we say what we call biblical floods, these are floods that's supposed to happen in the vicinity of 1 every 500 to 1,000 years. We have recorded now our 7th since 2010, just in this country. And then I don't have to talk to you about the issues that we're seeing with the pandemic and the forest fires that are happening in California. You know, I just left there recently to see what's happening there. It's just amazing. The forest line, the line of fires that are currently being fought in Southern California actually stretch from New York to LA. That's how long the actual forest lines. There are more than 30,000 firefighters now fighting those. And so that's just to put you in context of the challenges that we're dealing with. You can advance next. And then we actually have a set of level 2 challenges that are disruptive to our way of life. And these include issues like poverty. These include issues like the digital divide. I'll talk a little bit more about the effect that the pandemic is having on poverty here upcoming. Next slide. And so the United Nations, for its part, is also looking at these grand challenges in a unique way. They have developed the UN Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 of them. They recognize that no one entity, whether it's government, whether it's industry, whether it's academia, can solve these goals. That's why Goal 17 focuses on partnerships, because that's what's going to be required to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. And these development goals really encompass many of the grand challenges that I just highlighted to you earlier. Next slide. So we are truly also not just dealing with unprecedented challenges. Just one click, please. We're also dealing with unprecedented change. So you see here, Amazon is the topic of the day. This is an Amazon facility. And what people may not realize is that while Amazon employs about 1 million workers, and we are looking to grow that number here in Southern California, Amazon also employs more than 200,000 robots, 200,000. And so, you know, automation, digitization, you can click the next one and click again, please. Automation, digitization, and the like are real. They're affecting us in a significant way. Latest study shows that about 47% of our employment, US employment, is currently at risk due to automation and due to artificial intelligence. And here's the interesting part about that. this data was compiled before the pandemic. We know that post-pandemic, we have seen automation and we have seen digitization accelerate at a tremendous pace. Next slide. We're seeing this in the historic unemployment that we are seeing now for our student graduates. This is the latest data. Actually, this data is as of August. Recent college graduates had a 7.9% unemployment rate. And if you look at that chart there, those are years. So that's the highest unemployment rate going all the way back, to 2000. I've actually ran these numbers. It's the highest unemployment rate for recent college graduates in the last 50 years. And so we're sending them into an environment that's extraordinarily difficult right now. Next slide. And we've also seen that we've seen a growth in disparities when you break down unemployment by race. And that's regardless of degree. If you look here, let me just put it to you in context. This chart shows educational attainment by degree and diploma, right? And so educational employment, and then the unemployment rate associated with that. So you see at less than a high school diploma, Caucasian student or individual with less than a high school diploma right now has a 10.1% unemployment rate. That number is double for African Americans. If you fast forward, if you look at an African American with an associate's degree, he has a 10.3 or she has a 10.3% unemployment rate. That's similar. And again, this is all post-COVID because these numbers have dramatically changed since COVID. That's similar to a Caucasian student with less than a high school diploma. Wow. So that's what the data is telling us. All right, next slide, please. We are dealing with unprecedented disruption, and it's a challenge. We know that the data shows that about 100 million people globally have fallen back into the poverty level, and many of them are experiencing what is called extreme poverty, which means they are existing on less than $1.90 a day. The World Food Program, basically, and they just won the Nobel Prize here recently, but the World Food Program states that the number of people facing acute hunger will actually double this year to more than 265 million. And in the US, between 6 and 8 million people have been pushed into poverty. And, and when we say push into poverty, it's primarily due to job losses. And about 40% of those who have lost work due to COVID could not put their hands on 1 month of savings in order to tide them over while they're looking for jobs. So I get that the challenge in front of us right now is COVID, but the real challenge is to our way of life that we will have to deal with once we get past this pandemic. Next slide, please. I think Virginia is the ideal crucible to lead the country in solving this. And there are a whole host of reasons why I believe that. If you look at the job creation here, if you look at the ability, most of the internet traffic in the country actually runs through this specific state. And then I don't have to tell you all the great things about the state in terms of its digital infrastructure, cybersecurity, workforce, and business climate. You all know this. You all know this in infinitum. Next slide. But let's talk a little bit about why Mason, and let's talk a little bit about what I would like to do here at Mason as we move forward. Look, the institutions that are going to be the most significant institutions, the ones that will be the institutions that will lead the nation out of the challenges that we are into that I highlighted earlier, will be those that have a focus on reskilling, upskilling, and retraining. It'll be those that have clear pathways for people coming out of high school, but also coming out of community college. And those institutions that provide flexible educational access for everyone. I recently spoke with one of our alum, actually an individual who, has a prominent position in our alumni association currently. And I was talking to him, and I said, "What degree did you get from Mason?" And he said, "Well, I got my MBA." I said, "Oh, okay. What was your undergraduate in?" I said, "Well, I didn't have an undergraduate." So what do you mean? I said, "I didn't have an undergraduate degree." I said, "But you got an MBA, right?" He said, "Yeah." I said, and he said, "Well, let me explain to you what happened. I had some credits, I had some service and other things that I've done here. And the folk at Mason were able to craft a program for me at the MBA level where I was able to get in and get admitted to the MBA program and graduate with my MBA. And now I have a successful career." Those are the kinds of institutions that are going to remake the future. We are establishing a record number of new academic programs to deal with these challenges. I recently had a conversation with the leadership at Chev, and one of the things they told me blew my mind. They said, "Look, Mason has established more academic programs than all of the other institutions in Virginia combined," which kind of blew my mind. Next slide, please. So what are we working on that I think will connect to the kinds of things that you all see as important as currently? There are 5 specific programs, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I need from you all. So there's a President's Upskilling Initiative, and what that upskilling initiative is that we've developed a talent exchange where we are now able to position our students to get micro-credentials and training in 4 key areas that we think are highly integrated and connected to the needs of Northern Virginia in the DMV. They include government contracting, IT and cybersecurity, project management, and paralegal. Those are the 4 areas that we have identified as being areas that are highly important to this area. We have developed a 90-day program, which we're calling the Mason Talent Exchange, that allows us individuals to start and finish and get credentialed in a 3-month period. One of the areas where, as a preview, one of the areas where we're going to need help is helping us connect these programs to businesses in the community who actually need, who need talent, or who are willing to take a chance on talent that might have come from a different field. It could be a flight attendant that was laid off, or a mechanic, or a restaurateur who comes in and takes one of these tracks and is looking to get into something, thereby positioning themselves to support themselves in the future. We are developing an entrepreneurship ecosystem, and this is the work that's coming out of the campus. That the idea here is to provide a suite of services for young entrepreneurs that provide no gaps in assistance. So what do I mean by that? Entrepreneurs need lots of things in a life cycle of their success, right? They need lots of support, from financial to project management to marketing, right? And so they may have a great idea, they may have a great business, but taking that great idea and that great business to a successful long-term business is not an easy thing to do. And our ecosystem that we're putting in place will provide support in all of those levels, including in the investment piece on the back end. And that means building relationships with angel investors, but also venture capitalists who can come in and make investments. And so that's what we mean when we say to provide a suite of services to entrepreneurs with no gaps in assistance. Look, I understand that oftentimes you all look for the big fish, right? You look for the Amazons, the Northrop Grummans of the world, and that all is great. We're really, of course, we're really behind that. We also want to develop under that a whole suite of homegrown companies, right? Because we have to think about what will be the next Amazon. If I were to ask you what Apple, EA Sports, Dell, Genentech. I have like 20 or 30 of them that have catalog. If I were to ask you what all those companies had in common, the answer is that they were all started by entrepreneurs in their teens and 20s, right? You can throw Facebook into that group. You can throw MySpace into that group. You can throw many of the companies that we hold, you can throw Apple into that group. Many of the companies that we hold near and dear today were literally started by people in their teens and 20s. When I tell this to my students, I look after them, I tell them, look, and so that means you all are underachieving right now, and we got to help you get going. But we want to provide that ecosystem for the next great company. There's an internship initiative that we are putting in place. And what does that internship initiative mean? We're looking at the actual job postings that companies are putting forward. And based on those job postings, you get an idea of the types of jobs that are needed in this area. Victor tells me you guys have some other tools that you're looking at. We want to be able to employ looking at those tools as well. And then the idea is, can we take those jobs that are necessary and that are needed and correlate them directly to the degree programs and the students who are graduating from our institutions? So we've started that process. What we're learning is that there is a gap in terms of experience. So many times the companies will set a need, they want somebody in this specific job classification and area, but they want that person to have 2 to 5 years or 3 to 5 years of experience. Obviously, a graduate doesn't necessarily have that, but if we can start that entity, that person with an internship opportunity starting in the sophomore year, they will have significant experience on the back end. And in addition to that, if we can start them with companies that will get them cleared or put them in a position to get clearances, they will actually be commercially ready. Look, our goal is to make to produce the most commercially productive graduates in this region. And we think that we can do that. Another big element is what we're calling our Renaissance Education Initiative. And what that means is we're not just talking about how we train our engineers and our scientists in order to meet the job demand of today, but also how we train our humanists, how we train our artists, how we train our liberal arts students. The idea is we can couple their basic liberal arts training with a generalist credential that brings them up to speed in a host of areas. What we are looking at is areas like cybersecurity, data analytics, machine learning. With 5 to 7 courses, they can take that liberal arts degree and couple it with a prerequisite set of training that also can be highly valued and useful in the workforce. And so we're moving in that direction as well. For our engineers, on the other hand, we are giving them an education in what we call the soft skills, right? Helping them to communicate better, helping them to be able to develop presentations better, present those presentations better, really helping them engage society in a much clearer and better way. And so that is also a program that we're putting in place. Next slide. And then finally here, all of you know we have our Institute for Digital Innovation. And what that institute is, it's an entity that basically sits on top of many of the academic programs that we have on campus. And this is the initiative that we put in place for our part of helping to attract Amazon. But it's an interdisciplinary framework that positions us to solve a whole host of problems in a whole host of areas. It's not bound by an academic bureaucracy, so there's no department to answer to. It's actually already pre-funded for its long-term success with the investment that we've already received from the state, the investment that the academic institution that we're putting into it, and with its partners that it already has in place, its success is assured provided we produce enough students on the back end. That's a big deal for us moving forward. Next slide. One more time. Here are all the areas that we feel that will be significant opportunities for this institute. And if you take a look at these areas, you see that it's a broad swath of applications here that can really support the infrastructure of Northern Virginia. And so we think this will be a key offering for you all going forward. Now, next slide. Now, what do I need from all of you in all of this? You know, my philosophy is that all of these engagements should come with an ask, right? I need three things. Number one, I need advocacy. We've actually been doing a pretty good job in this area over time. You know, that's going to be accelerated here in the future. I don't know if you know this, but George Mason is funded significantly lower on a per student basis than our peers, our peer academic institutions in the state of Virginia, to the tune of about $1,600 per student. And so when you add that up over our 38,000 students, comes out to be about a $40 million funding gap. And that's $40 million a year. And that doesn't get us to the point where Virginia Tech or UVA is. That just gets us to the average. That's how far we are away from average. This is the most critical portion of the state. We're the largest, most diverse institution in this state. You know, because of that, there is a level of consequence associated with this institution that isn't associated with any other in the state. We are the only ones that can truly provide a clear pathway for any student who wants an opportunity to receive a four-year degree in this state. We actually can provide a pathway for them. That's one of our long-term goals. For every Virginian who wants a degree, we will provide you either an opportunity or a pathway towards that opportunity. No other institution in the state can say that. They either lack the bandwidth and the breadth to be able to do it, or their admission standards are such that the students couldn't get in from day one. And so we think we have a lot to offer. So advocacy is a big one. The second one, I'm looking for partnerships. We are going to grow this campus significantly over the next 10 years. We know we're going to grow by 9,000 to 12,000 students. So we'll be in the 50,000 range over the next 10 years. In order to accommodate that students, we're going to grow by another 300 to 500 faculty and another 100 to 200 staff, just to accommodate that student growth. That's 400 to 700 high-paying jobs. The average faculty member makes $80,000 to $90,000 a year. That's 400 to 700 high-paying jobs that's going to be located somewhere. And when we put a job in place, you never have to worry about that job going to China. You never have to worry about that job going to Brazil. You never have to worry about that job going to Texas. That job will be here because the faculty and the students are here and they need that connection and they need that engagement. And so we are looking for partners who are willing to come to the table with an offer, come to the table with an engagement, just like you would for a company who was going to put 500 to 700 new jobs in an area, because that's what we're going to do. Those, we know we're going to put some of those faculty in Arlington, but the rest of them are up for grabs. It's going to be in the Manassas campus, it's going to be here in Fairfax. And that's where the bulk of those individuals are going to be. And it's going to be where I can get the best package and suite of support from all of you. And then finally, I need your help with industry. We're open for business. And I don't know how people have moved in the past, but I have two speeds, fast or stop. And my goal here is to figure out ways to work quickly and to work at the speed of business and support the institution. So that's what I have. I am more than open to take any questions you all will have. And I want to thank you again.
Thank you very much, Dr. Washington. You clearly have been very busy since July. That was an amazing presentation, and I love the way it starts at such a strategic level to really help us understand the big picture of what we're all facing. So thank you for articulating that. And now it's up to us to figure out how are we going to work with George Mason University and help you deliver on those amazing programs. So let me offer the floor to one of the commissioners or to a commissioner. Are there any questions that you might have?
Yes, Dr. Washington, should we call you?
That's right.
Yes. I'm the vice chair here at the EDA. First of all, I wanted to applaud your very simple set of very codified basic initiatives. I thought as a CEO of one of the technology companies who started here with just a few people and now has offices in multiple countries and one of the faster growing technology companies in the United States. I loved your focus on your basic initiatives and bringing it back to the fact that we're, and I wanted to have you hear it from us, hear it from me directly, is as much as we love the Amazons and the Facebook and Google adding more and more people here locally, we recognize that an economy focused on building and growing our own technology companies here is highly important for us building an economy that will serve the big companies too. And when we took questions from Amazon, they were equally as focused on that part of the economy because they're not just looking for kids out of school. They're looking for kids with 2 to 4 years of technology experience and 5 to 10 years experience. And they get those from the smaller technology companies. So I wanted to thank you for your focus on the entrepreneurship ecosystem. And I think it's brilliant as well that you're highly focused on the internship initiative. With regard to the IDIA, though, my question there was obviously a lot of different things on there. And we've seen other universities and other organizations who've sort of picked 1 or 2 things they want to own, right? Cybersecurity or, 1 or 2 things. That was obviously a lot of things. Do you think George Mason will, if you start thinking of your focal areas from the IDIA, do you see you sort of picking a few and championing and owning that, or going as broad as you outlined?
So, a lot of those areas are application areas, right? And so the idea here is cyber, machine learning, data analytics will be 3 areas in which we feel that we can have a strong focus.
Got it.
Many of the opportunity spaces, whether that's applied to wearable devices, social media, mobility, energy infrastructure, those are all areas of application. But the 3 areas of focus will be in those: data analytics, machine learning, and cyber. Right. So that's where we see our focus being. And that's where we're going to make the bulk of our investments going forward. Will we have the span and the breadth in order to focus on those 3? Oh, I think so. We've established a new standalone school of computing, and that has been just approved. It'll be coming online here soon. In the steady state, that will have easily 100 to 200 faculty just in that school of computing alone. And that will position us to tackle those 3 areas extraordinarily well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else have a question?
Dr. Washington, Steve Partridge from Northern Virginia Community College. Good to see you again, sir.
Great to see you.
I'm going to throw a softball question. How do you see the relationship between NOVA and GMU growing under your leadership?
Well, yeah, that is a softball question. Look, You know, when I talked about the pathway part of this talk, the idea of being able to touch a kid wherever that kid exists in the state and be able to take that kid's dreams and fulfill them with an academic opportunity on the back end. A big part of that is going to be our partnership with community colleges and Nova in particular. That relationship is going to expand. Right now, we we have one of the leading pathway programs in the whole country already in our advanced program. And that program is going to expand dramatically over what, based on what we want to do going forward. And then we're going to creatively look for ways to even expand that jointly together into the high school realm, right? Because there are high schoolers now who are taking AP classes, they're doing all of this kind of stuff to advance when they can actually take the actual class from George Mason or from the community college and actually be working on their advanced degree while they're while they're doing their high school work, right? And we can position them on the back end as well. So we're going to be extraordinarily aggressive and very, very creative with this partnership. It will expand and expand dramatically.
Okay, thank you.
So, Dr. Washington, you mentioned the connection with industry and this idea of really reskilling, upskilling, training individuals. And as you may know, the EDA has kicked off a talent initiative that has become very successful. And hopefully, Victor's had an opportunity to talk to you and your team about it. But I think one of the factors in it is that we've reached out to the businesses, to the human resource departments, and really understand what are the jobs that are available and connecting people with those jobs. So we've had these talent, connections to
Right.
help the companies fill. So I think
We've been a part of a couple of those. I think Victor will attest to that. And the idea is to continue that.
Yeah, and to build on it. And, I'll just tell you, I think in the past, we've had a hard time really understanding what the companies really needed. It's been like two different languages, their language, the educational language. This is an opportunity to start to come up with a language that works so that you understand what the companies are asking for and the companies can help influence what it is that you're able to deliver. So I think there's a new day is the best way that I can describe it.
That is the hope. And to be totally honest with you, this is an area where we're really going to need your partnership and engagement because you have those partnerships in place. You've had them for years. And the idea is how can we leverage them to give the companies exactly what they want and thereby also supplying opportunities for our students on the back end.
It's exciting.
Yeah,
it is very, very much so.
So, Kathy?
Yes.
Thank you, President Washington. We're just so elated to have you tonight to speak with us. I'm certainly thrilled about your programs of outreach. And I know here at our organization, we have reached out to students from other universities as a part of our workforce program initiative here. It was very successful. Mr. Batt headed that up for Victor, did a great job there. I'm wondering, as a part of your vision, are you considering looking at other institutions in the region, particularly HBCUs like Morgan and Howard University, as you know, have great engineering programs, and we can always go further down 95 South and find a school that's certainly well positioned in that area. So going forward, is a part of your vision to try to find a pathway to include HBCUs in some of your programs here at George Mason? Yeah,
and we're starting with the two HBCUs, the two state HBCUs here, right? And so, we've already been in discussions with both Norfolk State and Virginia State as public HBCUs. And then I haven't had much discussion with Virginia Union yet in Hampton, but in my programs that I initiated in Irvine, I actually had a partnership with Hampton. We had a number of Hampton students and Alabama A&M, North Carolina A&T students come out and engage with us and their faculty on a yearly basis. So this is something that I have a history of doing.
Right.
I'm going to bring some of those partnerships with me. It's going to make it a little easier now, because I kind of know what is needed with some of those institutions. But I'm looking for additional partnerships as I learn who all the players are. I know some of the folk at Morgan. The new dean of the engineering school at Morgan is the former department chair of mechanical engineering here at Mason. Mm. And so, and he was actually, he's a personal friend and one of the individuals who recommended me for this job. So it's set up quite nicely for me to have the partnerships and to make them work. And so, but I need to execute. And so that's what we're gonna be looking at doing.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Are there other questions? I have one more, and that was, we put a concerted effort together with the 1-2-3 Club with Ann Holton to try and get that $40 million gap filled. And I'm just wondering, where is it at this point? Is it still, I thought we had made some progress, so.
So here's the deal. As you know, of the $40 million gap, they had allocated $22 million to close it. It was going to be $10 million in this fiscal year and then $12 million in next fiscal year. That money was quote unquote unallotted in the post-COVID budget. So they had taken it away. One of my priorities was to see if I can get that restored. I have met now with about 51 different elected officials in the House and the Senate. And that includes all of the members of the Virginia Legislative Black Caucus. That includes everybody on appropriations in both the House and the Senate. And it looks like we're going to be able to get about 17 million of that 22 million restored. I'm not making any pronouncements about it right now, but in the final budget that just came out, we were able to get 17 of the 22 million back. And the governor also supports it. He has to support it since he came on campus and tried to give all of us COVID. So he has to support it, but no, it's just joking. He does, he supports it. I got a good feeling we're going to be able to get some of that. But even with that 17 mil, that still means that there's $23 million of adults sitting out there. And every year when we get bigger, the actual number increases and not decreases, by the way. So
well, we need to find a way to keep the pressure on.
If you look at the public institutions in the state of Virginia, 85% of the growth in enrollment over the last 5 years has been supplied by just one university. And that university is George Mason.
I think the other factor is the number of George Mason University graduates that are driving the economic engine of Northern Virginia.
I'm talking
in terms of the companies that are here. And we just need to get that number and keep reminding everybody, this is the golden goose here, people. So
you're right. Well, you get no argument from me on that.
All right. Well, thank you. Any final questions? Thank you so much for joining us. Let's keep the connection and the communication going. We love what you're doing. We can't wait to see that wonderful innovation center going up. What a spectacular building and facility that's going to be. So
yeah, we're looking forward to it as well.
Yeah.
Well, look, I want to thank you all for giving me a little bit of time. And remember, go Patriots.
Go Patriots. Thank you, thank you very much.
Washington.
Outstanding. Thank you all.
Thank you. Well, that was terrific. We thank you so much for being here and for your wonderful comments and really helping us look at the big picture, but also all the things that you're doing. Just as a reminder to the board members, in November, we will have Stephen Moret, who's president and CEO of the Virginia Economic Development Partnership, speaking to us. And then in December, we have a speaker from Amazon that will be joining us. So we want to keep these dialogues going. With the next agenda item is a discussion about the office market survey and analysis that we heard last month from Brightline Strategies to assess how COVID-19 will change demand for commercial space over the next 2 years through June of 2022. The result will be used to align FCEDA performance metrics for jobs and square feet with anticipated market conditions. And we'll be discussing those metrics in our November board meeting in closed session. Executive Vice President Alex Imes is heading up the study, and I will ask Alex and Stephen Tarditi, Director of Market Intelligence, to summarize the results of the Brightline analysis so far. Executive Vice President Imes.
Thank you, Chairman Lang, and good evening, everyone. Yeah, we wanted to come back this evening and report on the conclusions or findings of the Brightline study, as Chairman said, to look at the effect of the pandemic on commercial real estate, specifically office leasing transactions, and projected impact on the need and use of office space. And as we talked about last time, Brightline was commissioned to help us capture the sentiment among office tenants regarding the decisions they'll make about how much of the space they're going to lease or use over the next 12 and 24 months. And this, as she said, was for how we will set our job and square footage metrics for the FCEDA in 21 and 22. Can everyone hear me? I got a weird feedback there.
I think
Yes.
you're okay now.
Okay.
I think you're okay now. It was a little garbly. Yeah.
Good. So what we're going to hear this evening will focus exclusively on Fairfax County. If you recall, when we heard from the Brightline team last month, they reviewed for us their findings from May and June assessment of the entire Washington, D.C. area, which included a Fairfax County segment. But tonight we're going to hear about this deep dive into the Fairfax County office market and the companies that we heard from, more than 100 companies who are making a leasing decision sometime in the near future. We have the Brightline team here with us tonight. Kevin and Jamie and Mike are on the line, and they will join us for the discussion and Q&A about how the assessment was conducted and other questions that may arise. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen, who has closely followed the effects on our companies since all this started, to tell us what the study found and what it means for our outlook. Stephen?
Thank you very much, Alex. Good evening, Commissioners. Next slide, please.
Okay, Stephen, that's not working. We'll have to.
Yeah,
Can you not hear me?
yeah,
No.
you're getting the echo.
Nope.
It's difficult to hear you. Some feedback.
I think so.
Is that better?
No.
Still the same.
Okay. I am going to attempt to log off and back in.
You might have to step off and come back on.
Yeah.
Is this any better?
Way better.
Yeah, there it is.
It was simple reboot, the best IT process, right? Again, thank you very much, Alex and commissioners, for having me here. Can you please go to the next slide? Here are some of the boxes that we look to have checked off from the flash poll. We did this to ensure we are representing the county as a whole, and we can cross-tabulate information to extract specifics such as square footage ranges and the various industry sector mix. So the square footage ranges represent an even distribution, which ensures each type of user is represented throughout the market. We don't have 80% going to the 5,000, 10,000 square foot. It's a nice representation that'll show us the true effect at every level. And the industry mix generally reflects our office industry mix of the office users, especially the high concentration of professional services, technology firms, and government contractors. And then most importantly, we have the breakdown of lease expirations, which illustrate how pivotal these next 2 years will be for our efforts and the county as a whole. Next slide, please. And now that we understand the set of leases coming up for reassessment of square footage, we'll look at the sentiment surrounding the physical office space. And this top question is one of the most interesting takeaways I got from this flash poll, which to best illustrate it, I'd say it's not as big of a pendulum swing as we thought it was going to be, where these office decision makers were asked before COVID, what was their breakdown of office employees that were full-time in the office, part-time telework, workforce deployed most of the time in the field, and deployed in the field part of the time. We can only see an 8% drop off from the sentiment that they have during this survey, projecting 12 to 18 months out, which shows that these decision makers still hold a lot of value in physical office space. And that sentiment is also backed up by the next question, which is considering what are you going to do with your space when it comes to make that decision. And the 6% that said they were shutting down their physical office space and moving to remote work from home really shows that it's, again, it backs up that sentiment of valuing the office space. Next slide, please. But this long-term optimism does not get us out of the weeds. And as you can see, there's certainly a case to be made for a contraction of office space. Brightline asked about the change in footprint for the next round of lease decisions. And although the long-term optimism seems high, over half of the respondents said they would reduce their footprint to some degree when they reach the end of their current lease, like I said, to varying degrees. So Brightline used this as a bridge in determining a forecast for future of office space use. Next slide, please. And so when they put all of these different factors into the machine and modeled the forecast for our demand, they in projecting the next 2 years of office space contractions due to the uncertainty surrounding COVID-19, they were able to determine that over the course of fiscal year 2021, we expect a total reduction of 25.5% amongst office decision makers when faced with the lease expiration. And that sort of makes into that bell curve you see as it kind of trails off into fiscal year 2022, which suggests that some of the office decision makers either feel a little bit more optimistic or are at that point where they're deciding if they want to reduce that space and want to see if the future becomes any more certain. So at this point, I'm going to open up the floor. I'll hand it back to Alex first for any closing comments, but I think you can see in the short term, we are going to see some pain as far as the office demand goes, but we still think that our office tenants here, who are clearly represented within this 106 respondents, hold value in office space going forward.
Thank you very much, Stephen. And just the two comments that I'll add is one, as Stephen said, I want to reiterate that the 25.5% represents those who are making a decision in the 6 to 12, the 12-month period that we're studying. So it does not touch everyone who's in an office space in terms of how they would adjust. There are lots of other work and office behaviors and adaptations that have to play themselves out. But these are among those surveyed who would in fact be making a decision on their leasing and have some reduction, and there's a net reduction there because, as you saw on the previous slide, there was a segment of companies that would be expanding, probably based on the type of business that they do. And so I just before we open it up, we do have the team here as well. So just to keep that in mind on in terms of the discussion, but we want to open it up now and have questions and respond to those for you.
Hi, it's Lenny Hainsworth. I have a question. Can you talk a little bit about the distribution of the company surveyed in terms of what kind of company, what size company, range of that? And then what's the error bar around that bottom line assessment number?
Hey, Alex, when Lenny's, when you go through Lenny's answer, can you leave the numbers up on the screen just so we can see them? Thanks.
Sure. So on that, if you want to look at these numbers, right, James?
No, I was just saying, I just want to keep studying them as you're answering Lenny's question there.
Yeah.
You want to see the numbers related to the businesses that were surveyed?
Yeah, I thought that might.
If you maybe go back another one.
Back up.
Or two. Or three. Okay, so here is where we cover the composition of the size of the firms and types of firms that responded. And it does, we looked at this, it does pretty well parallel the composition of the tenant base in the county as far as the industries and as far as the sizes of companies. As Stephen said, we're not overweighted in one type or the other as far as who responded to the survey. Kevin, is there anything else you would want to add on that as far as what you all saw in the response comeback?
Oh, and Alex, sorry, 1 second. I do have the results. We obviously couldn't add every question from the survey on there. It'd be quite extensive, but there is one that addresses, Commissioner Hainsworth, that addresses the different stages, life stages within a business life cycle. So 26% of the respondents were startup, 6% scale up, 31% emerging growth company, and 31% mature. So again, that did cover most of what we see and reflective of the business life cycles that are within the county.
Thank you. And then the range of the error bar around the 25%, what do you think that is?
Yeah, and this is Kevin Hudak from Brightline. I'm happy to step in. And when we looked at that forecast, Commissioner, I would emphasize that forecast does not necessarily include new tenant acquisition. So folks migrating into Fairfax County from other jurisdictions. This was representing only those who are current Fairfax County tenants and office users and their behaviors. We sliced it up quite a few different ways. So we looked at it from a top line perspective, just on that 57% or the 47% who said that they would reduce their square footage. We then also did it in terms of the renewal timeline, which is the data that Alex and Stephen presented. We also looked at it in terms of assigning actual square footage to each of the companies in our survey, and then reflecting those results in the forecast as well. When you look at the survey itself, that gives you a range, of anywhere from that 17%, from 17% to the 28% when you're looking at the type of projection that Stephen and Alex just looked at in terms of the, not necessarily error, but the range either way when you do some of those different calculations. And again, the biggest part is that, the data that Stephen presented, you have 57. So of those who were likely to reassess their space size and space needs, or were unsure, 57% of those said that they would reduce their space, right? Which equates to about 47% of the sample. That doesn't mean that 47% of the square footage will disappear. It's that 47% of tenant organizations are considering that reduction. And so then we match that up with what the extent of that reduction could look like. And then we sort of amortize that almost. One of the things that we found in the survey is your 4+ year renewal timeline. They also tend to be some of the folks who are most likely to say they're going to reduce. But in reality, we are projecting that sort of the panic or some of these space decisions are going to be ameliorated by progress in managing the pandemic, by future business growth, by that in-migration as well of new tenants coming into Fairfax County.
Hey, Kevin, just to reiterate that the numbers and the impact, to make sure we're clear on this. So doesn't include new potential organizations, but this is net accretive change. So this is taking the positives minus the negatives. We see over the next year a 25% reduction in the amount of office space leasing. And based on your sampling, you're saying that could be across all the companies then. Is that what you're saying then? A 25% reduction?
Yeah, that would be net accretive, and that's their intent as of today.
Right.
Right.
And that's square footage, not number of companies, right?
It's square footage, not number of companies. Correct. So one of the things we found is that there was, a high proportion of those 1,000 to 5,000 square foot firms who were, many of them facing financial challenges, reducing because of that. There's also a number of those larger than 50,000 square foot firms who are thinking of peeling off, a small proportion of their space. And that factors into the overall square footage reduction too. But a lot of the area to pay attention to were those smallest of the firms and the largest of the firms. And again, it's all based on that idea, looking at that slide, we still have, anywhere the way you cut it, 60 to 75% of firms who are very much staying in Fairfax County and potentially staying at their same square footage. But then you do have some of those firms in the smallest and the largest brackets who are reducing square footage. And I believe the number also was 10% of the firms who are reassessing their space would actually expand. So you do have a small subset that are actually looking at this as an opportunity for their businesses as well.
And then when you talk about year 1 to 2, is that also net accretive to the 25? So you see that between 0 to 2 years, the number is 32% of a reduction?
I don't believe that part is net accretive, but I can double check. And Alex and Stephen, I can certainly connect with you.
Can you
Stephen, you might have
2 slides from now, just make sure we're looking at this net right. Maybe one more, sorry. So you said it's 25.5%, which is the next 6 and the 6 through 12. 1 through 2, I would have thought just stacked on top of that. So 32%, 32.7%. Is that on top of the 25.5?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And that again is looking at it versus renewal timeline horizon. We also, slice and dice it in a few other ways as well. But I think that looking at it from a renewal standpoint is critical, particularly for setting goals and metrics.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Kevin, have you done this kind of analysis in other parts of the country out of curiosity?
So we are doing this right now. We have our phase 2 COVID-19 impact study that we are doing with BOMA, the Building Office Managers Association, and International, and Yardi. And so we just wrapped that out coming out of the field where we, also tested likelihood to reassess their office spaces, potential reductions in square footage. And what we'll be providing as well is also a comparison for Fairfax County versus the rest of our sample. And, one of the things that I'm seeing, and we have done this for other sort of county EDAs and associations as well, but one thing I'm most interested in looking at is from April to May, Mid-Atlantic, to now September through October, national, we saw about a 10-point increase in folks saying that, yes, I'm reassessing my office space. We also saw an increase. We asked this question, and we also asked it in Fairfax County, is coronavirus a temporary blip? And within a month to a year, things will return to normal, or is this an inflection point? And we actually jumped up to about 73% of office decision makers nationwide saying that this could quite be a transformation or a key inflection point in their workplaces, right? For this, though, for Fairfax County, what I thought was most important is that while there is that 47% of companies considering, those space reductions, the fact is that it's not a 47% loss in square footage. It's more like what we're seeing here on the screen, remembering that that doesn't include new tenants coming in, and that it's also that intent as of today, right? And so we're encouraging all of the building owners and managers that we work with and those that we'll be presenting that data to, that now is sort of the moment of opportunity for them to engage with some of these tenants and some of these enterprises. I would say it's the same for the Fairfax County EDA as well. It's a good time to get in and be the experts in space, the experts in resources to provide. If you recall, the top performing messages from our survey that we tested involved Fairfax County's $25 million loan program for small business, as well as the talent initiative. Now is the time. We originally came from the political world and transitioned to more of the real estate development and commercial office work that we've been doing over the past 8 years. But in the political world, there's also messaging and positioning. There's moments of opportunity where you can convince and persuade. And I think that nationwide, when it comes to the commercial office environment, it's certainly one of those moments, right? And I think that everything that we heard from President Washington, everything that we heard from the Fairfax County Executive last month lends itself to changing some of these attitudes and potential behaviors.
I would add one thing to this study that I think could adjust this, and I know there's ups and downs, but we saw this in our own company, is that a lot of landlords, for the companies who are under stress, well before the end of their lease, are coming to those tenants so that they don't churn and making offers well in advance of their renewal period, with the thought of getting a new lease extension, not waiting to the end of the lease, but reducing the space as part of that reducing churn, which means that some of these lease surveys that you've seen where they're 2 years out or a year out could be propelled faster forward as these real estate these landowners are looking to lock up somebody so that they don't churn. So they're offering deals faster before the end of leases. We saw that with ourselves, for example, and we're hearing that this is something that's landlords are starting to do in bulk.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that. It's just one thing to keep in mind is that when you look across the time horizon that was covered in the study and that Kevin spent a few minutes talking about, when you look at the density of renewals taking place over those time intervals. So for instance, in the next 6 months, you start to seeing with less than 5,000 square foot companies, there's only 4% of those that are up for renewal, right? But when you look at what does that mean for that size bracket of tenant over the next 2 years, it jumps up to 56%, right? So the renewal inflection point is a critical factor here, because the longer this pandemic continues, it's almost a driving catalyst in terms of the conversations you just referenced, James. Yeah. And certainly all of our real estate clients, owners and operators of commercial assets, have been engaging in those conversations to proactively stem perhaps the rising tide of attrition risk. And so the sooner people can address their tenancy and begin to work with them through these various challenges, the better. But where this data becomes so valuable is understanding who is the most vulnerable, right, who may be the greatest attrition risk to not just owners and operators of real estate, but also to the county itself. So this arms, I think, the county with some very deep insight into understanding the typologies of businesses that may be at greatest risk for attrition, or who are in most need of help. And what does that mean from the county from a resilience and performance standpoint in forecasting, but also the assets themselves. And it's really the combination of all those inputs that help us, I think, best equip all those that need to know what's happening, how best to address the circumstances. Granted, this is a moment in time, but it's a forward-looking instrument.
Do you guys look at location in any of this? Do you see if there's any locations that sort of stem the tide better or worse in Fairfax County?
Kevin, you want to take that one?
Sure. So we have a location breakout for Fairfax County. We can certainly look into that more, James. When we look at, for example, Tyson's versus Reston, versus the rest of the county. One thing I did want to mention when it comes to location, when you look at our national study that's fielding, we're going to be showing about half of tenants nationwide looking for more suburban, urban, or truly suburban destinations. And so when it comes to that sort of net square footage reduction versus that migration impact in migration, we believe that Fairfax County could certainly benefit as a result of that. And we can share more of those numbers as we close the survey and analyze the nationwide survey. I also would just say when it comes to the location factors within Fairfax County, this isn't necessarily a census. It's more trying to establish a representative sample of these company decision makers. And so to that end, I don't want to read too much into the location impacts, James, but I can certainly work with Alex and Stephen in generating some key findings from that angle.
Well, as much as this looks like a pretty bad news for the people who are here, we might see some flight from DC, and so some of this make up a change in strategy for our organization a little bit, that we hold on to the people we've got, recognizing they're going to take less space, but that we also are doing everything we can to entice people if they're going to move out of the city, that we've got a suburban location, so we take on more new clients. We're looking to escape high density.
Yeah, I think to that end, just one build on that point is the benefit or the ability for Fairfax County to think ahead and target those types of organizations that are looking to relocate to a more suburban location or suburban urban location, enables you to really think about how do we go pursue the right set of those opportunities and not waste precious resources, time, money, otherwise on those pursuit efforts that may not yield the outcome you seek, particularly in this environment. So by marrying your data set with the larger data set, both within the market, meaning the DMV, as well as the nationwide study, you're going to be able to do, I think, a good deal of micro-targeting in terms of who you should be pursuing and why, and what the conversion likelihoods will be among those organizations seeking to migrate into a different kind of market.
And for those of you not as familiar with his voice as I am from being on Zoom calls all day, that's Michael Broder, who's our president and CEO of Brightline.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you. More to be uncovered, but very, very interesting. And I think it will be really helpful in how we change or work on our strategies moving forward. So with that, I am going to present my report. And so as you know, we've been setting up the one-on-one sessions with the various supervisors. Cheryl sent out this morning a full listing of the meetings and who's going to be at those meetings. If you do need to change, please let us know as soon as possible, because as you know, these are difficult to set up and to get it all organized. And, this has been a tradition of ours to meet one-on-one with the supervisors. It's such a great opportunity for us to have a one-on-one dialogue, to learn more about what they're facing, what they're thinking, what they're thinking may match what we're doing, or where there may be some gaps. I know Lenny recently had a meeting with Dahlia. I saw the comments from that. I think it was very helpful to see, what she's thinking and how we can work together with her. We had our first session with Chairman McKay. That would be Victor and myself, and we're using a presentation. We certainly can change it, but it was a really good talking document, starting with what the supervisors' priorities are, how they may have shifted during COVID, talking about how we're working, how we are working together with the county, with other parts of the region, and then going into some of our programming, ending up with some of the things that we anticipate in terms of real estate and what are going to be some of the changes there. So it is a great dialogue. I just ask that after you finish your session, make sure that you and Victor put your heads together and really figure out what you learned from this session so we can compile that and make sure that we're keeping track of what it is we're learning from the supervisors. In the winter, probably in the March, April timeframe, we'll do a meeting with our board, with the Board of Supervisors, and that will be in advance of the budgeting process. So again, the communication is really critical, helping them to see what we're doing, but also understanding what some of their priorities are and how we can support them and the county and their specific districts. And so with that, the next item is I'm sad to announce that Christian Deschauer is going to be resigning from the commission. Family and work pressures have made it more difficult for him to be able to attend our meetings. I loved working with Christian. I always appreciated what a straight shooter he was. He was good counsel. He also asked really provocative questions. So I personally will miss him. We're asking him to come back in November so that we can all thank him for being a part of the commission. So that resignation is going in this evening. Tomorrow, the board will be meeting on appointments and reappointments. And as soon as those are finalized, I will send you a note. I don't want to, I know it's on the slate, but I don't want to announce it until we're sure that the Board of Supervisors has finalized that vote. And then lastly, Chairman McKay and I have been working on a proposal to expand the size of the commission to add 2 commissioners. And the reason for this is, I don't have to tell you what, this is a very big and complicated and complex county. We have many different industry sectors, many different interests, and we certainly want to make sure that those interests are represented on our commission, as well as making sure we have diversity in the broadest and deepest sense, sitting as commissioners. So that proposal will go to the legislature in January, and I'm anticipating that it will be approved. Our job is going to be to help Chairman McKay consider people that might make the kind of commissioner that we want to be on our commission. And he's always open to suggestions. He doesn't have to take our suggestions, but he is open to our suggestions. And that will be something that will happen, I anticipate, in the January, February timeframe. So with that, those are my comments. Any questions? Okay, so let me turn it over to our president and CEO.
Madam Chair, commissioners, county partners, and guests, good to see you this evening. I'm going to begin actually by turning it over to Mike Batt, who is going to talk about our latest virtual career fair. And Mike, would you take the mic?
Thank you. I appreciate it, Victor. Really the theme here in the message is we're still going down 2 paths. We are trying to help connect those displaced workers with companies that are hiring here, and we're also continuing to recruit talent to the region through outreach to universities across the country. So a couple of things to note here. First, the virtual career fair we just held on October 8th, a little different than the last few. This one was laser focused on those displaced. We reached out to Virginia Career Works, Virginia Employment Commission, and they sent out broadcasts to all those that have applied for unemployment benefits here in the county over the last couple of months. We've engaged with Visit Fairfax that has the connections with all of the retail, hospitality, restaurant industry folks. And then we, on the flip side, reached out and engaged 20 different organizations. This was, again, a little different than we've had in the past. We did have a lot of big companies that you can see there, but we also engaged with our own county, with fire and rescue, police, the universities and colleges for their continuing and adult education, as well as a couple of companies that focus on reskilling, Reviture and SmoothStack that do certification programs. So with that said, yet another successful event, because we reached out through press, through PR, all those resources or all those touch points that I just mentioned. And we had, over 800 again that signed up and viewed all those open positions, and over 400 that attended with almost 600 chats. You can see a couple of great comments there on the middle right side. Even our own, Fairfax County Police and Fire saying, hey, prior military, great, somebody retired, interested in management, and great candidate at the police department. So some really good feedback from our companies that participated. So yet again, a really successful career fair. So with that, let me move on to the next slide, just to touch on a little bit more on what we're doing moving forward. Again, working with outreach to recruit talent here and continue to develop partnerships for connecting those looking for positions. So we have a signed sponsorship with Women in Technology, and we're sponsoring their career fair next month, November 5th. So we get a lot for that, videos, blogs, but what's cool too is we have 2 booths that were offered as part of the sponsorship, and we provided those out to our own companies to participate. So HPE, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and then Easy Dynamics Corporation, which is a cybersecurity company out of Tyson's. We provided and offered that out to them as a Fairfax County company as part of our sponsorship. So we're excited to promote and support the Women in Technology Virtual Career Fair next month. And then there's an organization called Handshake that most of the universities use for connecting their students to jobs and companies. And so we're starting a campaign to reach out to 100 plus universities to get approved and go have strategic connections with them. We have about 15 to 20 so far, but we're going to aggressively increase that over the next few months. And then lastly, our next career fair is going to be January 28th, back focused on our cybersecurity tech companies. And we're looking forward to that next career fair as well. So a number of things in parallel, but continuing to grow. I think I learned a lot this evening too from Dr. Washington, and I think the wheels are spinning there on how we can grow that partnership with George Mason University and others. So thank you. Turn it back to you, Victor. You're on mute.
We've been so fortunate to have the support of the county, and it has really made a huge difference. I mean, the only reason we can do what we're doing is really because of the county support. And all of Mike's funding has come from the talent initiative funding that the county started providing a couple of years ago. And it has turned into a real win for us, not just for the talent, but also for our relationships with our companies. We'd always provided site location assistance. We'd always provided market intelligence. We'd always provided, small business assistance. But to provide, to take something that they had not expected and to put it in front of them and tell them that because they're a county company, that it doesn't cost them anything. It just blows their mind, and it has really improved our relationships with the company. So it's not just building our relationships and our opportunities for our talent, but it's also our relationships with our companies, and I believe really nailing them down more to our location. In terms of, that's for retention. And in terms of business attraction, it's something that really surprises the site locators, and they're very excited about it, and they always ask about it. And then of course, we have a tremendous amount of traffic coming to our website now. I think we're at over 20,000 inquiries a month. So we're really, really pleased about that. You may recall back in, I think it was April, we were at like 600. So we're very pleased with the move on that account. With that, I'd like to turn it over to Alan Fogg to give us an update on communications. Alan, would you take the mic, please?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, Victor. Good evening, EDA commissioners. First, I'd like to follow up on Mike's presentation about the most recent virtual career fair with news that we shared this morning about the very first virtual career fair. We won the Gold Award from the International Economic Development Council for the May 28th virtual career fair that we did, especially for recent grads and college graduates. And IEDC, for those of you who don't know, is the largest organization for economic development organizations and practitioners, and very respected in the field. Now remember, this was 2.5 months after the pandemic began, and we had envisioned, of course, targeting in-person events for our talent initiative, but we had to pivot to virtual events because, of course, there were no in-person events, career fairs or otherwise. Meantime, millions of people around the country had lost their jobs since the middle of March. Thousands of college graduates in the Mid-Atlantic region were facing a job market that was much different than the one they thought they would enter. So, and we heard as much from President Washington, who noted the severity of the situation for recent grads. So meantime, we had thousands of open jobs in Northern Virginia at Northern Virginia companies, especially in tech companies and companies that happened to be doing surge hiring during the pandemic. So put this event together. This was really an amazing team effort. Of course, Victor and Alex providing the leadership on the pivot strategy. Mike, of course, and his assistant Aiden and the DCI team working to make the event happen itself with Brazen, an Arlington firm that provides the virtual career platform. Mike lined up 13 companies, from Fortune 500 companies to small and minority businesses that had the thousands of jobs open. And they worked with career offices from more than 30 institutions of higher learning in the Mid-Atlantic region, including 7 historically Black colleges and universities. So a really great diverse lineup of companies and the colleges from where these students came from. Of course, the teamwork didn't end there. Mike and Aiden worked with many members of the EDA staff to line up those companies, and then work with the college placement offices involved. So we had 900 job seekers attend this event, and we had more than 900 conversations between the job seekers and the recruiters. Mike got great reaction, just like he showed from the last one. We had great reactions from the first one, from the companies doing the hiring, as well as from the colleges that were thrilled to have the opportunity to be part of such a large event at such an uncertain time. Also, we got great media for this. Victor got on television a few times. We got a lot of media for the career fair, and of course raised awareness of Northern Virginia as a place where thousands of jobs were available even during a sudden economic downturn. So this was really an awesome event. Now, we've presented 2 more job fairs since then. We've partnered with the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber on another job fair. And as Mike explained, working on another one in November with Women in Technology, and then he's got more planned for the new year. But it all started with this one. And we're thrilled to be able to be recognized with the highest level award that IEDC presents. And by the way, it's the 2nd gold award we won, but it's the first since 2012. So we're glad to be back in the win column. So just finally, just to say congratulations to all who worked on the event, and in fact, the entire initiative. And of course, thanks to the commission for securing the funding for this, and of course to the Board of Supervisors for the funding that generated this very timely effort. So really happy about that. Next slide, please. So now for the September media report. The big placement of the month was an op-ed in the Washington Post written by Victor and Stephanie Landrum from the Alexandria Economic Development Partnership that talked about the value of regionalism, especially during the pandemic. The hook that we used was the 1-year anniversary of the creation of the Northern Virginia Economic Development Alliance, which Victor, of course, was a prime mover and shaker in getting that started. He and Stephanie, who I think I mentioned last month is a Fairfax County Public Schools grad, talked about how the region has been able to respond to COVID in a more collaborative way because of the groundwork that had been laid a year earlier with the creation of the organization. So it was really great to have this placement in the Post for obvious reasons. You can see on the screen how many impressions it got and the earned media value just for this one placement. It raised a lot of awareness of the effort that we're spearheading. And I would say, by the way, I bet it was quite a surprise to local officials throughout the region to see that one of the authors about it was from Fairfax County. So next slide, please. The other important media hit from last month was a release that we put out in advance of the October 8th virtual career fair that Mike addressed. And we made some good hay with this, especially with a variety of local media outlets, and especially because this career fair, as Mike mentioned, the targeted displaced workers. I believe we even got Mike on the radio talking about it. Next slide, please. So we always want to know what kind of share of voice we have in the past month, and in effect, how our communications efforts compare with other economic development organizations. This month, we're showing you a regional chart, and you can see that we're the darker blue there, 48% to Montgomery County, Maryland, 46%. This is really the first time that Montgomery County showed up in any significant way in any of these share of voice charts. And this was because they hosted a Maryland Bioscience Conference last month, the Economic Development Corporation did. And they got a fair amount of attention for it, so kudos to them for that. Next slide, please. So how did our media efforts, media outreach efforts do for the first quarter? We've gone through 3 months. We've garnered more than 600 million impressions. We've gotten about a little more than $14 million of earned media value, where that's just a little bit behind our fiscal year 2020 pace. But I'm really confident that this is all going to pick up even more as we see more events and activity in the fall months. So I'm pretty happy with this. Next slide, please. So remember that we have about $1 million, as Commissioner Johnson noted. It's gone down just a little bit for our overall marketing communications budget for the fiscal year. So our return on investment is already 14 or 15 to 1 after just 1 quarter. So that's it for the communications report. I really appreciate all the help that we get from my communications colleagues, and the fact the rest of the EDA team and our partners at DCI for all the work they've done to help us build our communication effort, and of course, build awareness of Fairfax County and Northern Virginia as a tech center. So thank you to the EDA Commission for this opportunity to present, and I'm gonna send it back to Victor. So thank you.
Thank you, Alan. That is really some great news. And it's late in the evening. I have a number of slides, but I'm gonna go through them very quickly. And these are the events, the panels, the regional collaborations, some of the state strategic work I've been involved with. This first one was a lessons in leadership. The Greater Washington Leadership Group, which I'm part of, I'm an alumni. They asked me to tell my story. And they said, you know, from the south side of Chicago to Amazon to Fairfax, you know, give us the whole story. And what they really are trying to do is let young leaders know that there are opportunities for them, even though they may not look that way now. Next slide, please. This was all about connecting the region. This was the Connected DMV task force meeting. We, at this meeting, go over a number of recommendations. We continue to pursue the regional economic development strategy that we talked about. This is like the collaboration that we've done in Northern Virginia on steroids, because this would include all of suburban Maryland, DC, and us. And actually, it would include 6 counties in Maryland. Next slide, please. This was a great interview that Alan set up. This question, the reporters were interested in why were there 4 census tracts of the top 10 census tracts for the wealthiest Black people in the country in Fairfax County. That was really the question. And we talked to them working with Stephen Tarditi and his team and some other information. We basically gave them, you know, a profile on our county. And it also gave us a chance to really highlight some of the strengths of our county, one which is diversity. Next slide, please. This P3 event was actually a recording. It was pre-recorded for something that's going to happen this week, which is a P3 conference, public-private partnerships. And this is really targeted at higher education. The majority of the listeners and viewers of this program will be individuals who are either CEOs of presidents of universities or C-suite executives of educational institution. Next slide, please. This Fairfax County Business Continuity Partners, this is the group that we work with. This is Rebecca Moldry's team from the Department of Economic Initiatives and and the Community Business Partnership at George Mason University, which supports small business. This is where we come together to talk about things like the RISE program, the free services that Karen Schmall helps with on the legal side for small business, and also the small business counselors that we have on hand. Next slide, please. This was all about a regional economic development strategy. This is the steering committee. We are going ahead. I've already met with the representatives from the state of Maryland, as well as the District of Columbia. Next slide, please. Please, Tom. Thank you. This regional event was really for elected officials to educate them on economic development and how the economic development organizations are responding post-COVID. Next slide, please. I've been asked, along with Chairman Lang, to be on the Chairman McKay's task force on equity, on opportunity. And I have my third session today. And we're really getting down into the root causes of inequity and how do you handle it. Next slide, please. I've been invited to be on the Board of Trustees, and I joined on October 1st, a Connected DMV. This is the group that actually is involved in the series of initiatives across the region on the COVID response. Next slide, please. We're continuing to work very closely with our with the Board of Supervisors. We met with Chairman McKay, which was really excellent. He only added one additional thing to his list, which was equity, but his priorities have not changed. I had an event with excuse me. We had an event. It's difficult working from home. We had another meeting, Lenny and I, with Supervisor Palchek, which was also excellent. And she added one more to her list also, which was equity. Next slide, please. As you guys know, I've been involved with the Virginia Economic Development Partnership on the Strategic Planning Steering Committee for the last 3 years. Every 2 years, we're required by law to update, and thank God we're updating it because COVID has certainly changed the way that we're approaching economic development. The great news is we have gone up in almost every category of ranking, from best business environment to most innovative environment. Next slide, please. And you just heard about the hiring and reskilling virtual career fair, which Mike and his team just did a really excellent job on. Next slide. We continue to meet. We met with the full task force the other day on equity, continuing to drill down into solving these problems. Actually, we went through some potential solutions today. Next slide, please. And I'll end with this. As you know, the county has an Economic Advisory Commission meeting once a month. This is a great meeting where we get to hear what the county is doing, and occasionally we report on the work that we've been doing. And Madam Chair, that's the end of my report.
Thank you very much. My husband came in, the dog came in. I'm just, it's working at home. I want to thank everybody for attending tonight. Are there any final comments or questions?
Congratulations, Victor, to you and the team on the prestigious award. That's fantastic. Two awards from that organization. You guys worked really hard for it, and it's well deserved.
Thank you.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
You know, it took a lot of creativity and innovation is one of our principles. And because we got the money, but you had to do something with it, and you've done amazing things with it. So Mike Batt and team, congratulations. Fantastic. So with that, we're going to close out the meeting. Let me ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, I think that was Lenny. So I guess we just need to go to vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Great. So we will see you in November. Have a
Thank you.
great rest of your night. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Thanks,
guys.
Kathy.
Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Right.
Great job, team.